Yeah, welcome everyone to the nutrition Q&A this month, this nutrition month. So I appreciate being here and hoping to help answer questions, but I know all of you are also know a lot of information too. So we can get started and chat away. I don't know if there's anything burning right now that you're like, I need to ask this, or we're just gonna start with Nick's coffee powder.
I have a question. So I recently did I had a baby. So after that, I wanted to lose the baby weight and I joined a nutrition program and it was all about like counting macros. And she had me on a really high protein level to lose the weight. And I just wanted to get your opinion on whether or not like I really would need that much protein every day to lose weight and like because it's just like it seems like a lot and I feel like I'm eating a lot of like meat and stuff to get there and it's aggressive.
That's a good question. Two things there, because you said you're post pregnancy, right? So postnatal, and depending on whether you're breastfeeding or not, and that's everybody's a little different. So if you're breastfeeding, that's already going to take up some calories, right? And that usually helps. If you're not able to, or you don't want to, whatever the reason is, you're not breastfeeding, right? You don't have that kind of acceleration of the system. So that's also something to just consider, that it'll help you if you are breastfeeding. The protein thing, oh, that's such a, all of nutrition, I feel like, is such a big topic of like clashing, right? There's this side, that side, maybe even like training too, right? Kim, Peter, like, it's like one person says one thing, the other person's like, no, that's completely false. And you should train this way and you should eat this way. I worry about the protein just from the science point of view. Like, I know science is changing, so that's the only thing that's hard. Like, every day I'm learning, like, maybe not everything I learned in school is still valid and it's changing. But I feel like if you're going over, it depends on, okay, so you're counting, so you understand like the numbers, but if you're going over like 1.1, 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, protein grams to kilogram, that's a lot, and that's a lot of stress on the system, on the kidneys, and a lot of times, like you said, like if you're trying to hit these numbers, you're either taking in a lot of meat, which may or may not be great for you, right? Let's just not even get into that controversy, but may not, or protein powders and things to kind of, it's sometimes really hard if you're somebody who's petite that normally only eats, I don't know, just say 1,800 calories, and you're trying to eat 100 and something grams of protein. It's pretty intense. And I think it's a lot on the body. There's a level to which point it kind of, levels off, I think. Like, there's only so much you can ingest all day. And I think that there's other ways to balance it. But again, if you're young and you're healthy, you don't have any health conditions, and you feel good about it and it's improving you and it's helping you, then, you can try it for a little bit, and then not everybody's going to respond the same way. So then you can adjust it. I'm not a big fan of the really, really high protein. I know people do it. With women too, it's a little different in the way that we excrete protein and nitrogen and different minerals in the body than men, and we don't excrete it as fast. So I tend to be a little more cautious with women as well. Unfortunately, we have totally different hormones, totally different bodies, right? So we have to kind of just adjust. But I know that wasn't as specific. Does that kind of answer, or do you want a little bit, like, you want to chat about a little bit more?
No, that was actually really helpful. I think you made a good point of just like trying it out and see how I feel. And I feel like at this point, maybe I could like wean off of it. And maybe in general, it's kind of like still keeping in mind calories in, calories out to lose weight. And that as long as I'm focusing on like really like healthy foods that make me feel good, I can just kind of like monitor what's happening.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And just monitor, and just, honestly, like, you make sure you're eating good sources of food, and that it's a balance in your life. And I think there's so much more to health and nutrition and feeling good than just the food, but also where it comes from, not just like calorie, a calorie is a calorie. Sometimes that's kind of like, not really. I know it's a calorie, but if your body doesn't recognize it and doesn't know where it came from, you know, but yeah, I think you're doing well just by asking and just kind of being aware of it. And then that way, if it's not feeling good, you know, your body, especially after having a baby, you've felt so many things, you can tell whether it's working or not, whether it feels good or not. So yeah, just kind of make sure that there's, you know, no indications of anything going wrong. And then you should hopefully be good. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. That's a good start, and congratulations. And I hope you're feeling good and baby is good and everybody's doing well at home.
Thank you. Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
All right. On the baby note, anybody else want to follow that? No. Any other questions? Unless we go back to Nick's question to kind of, or Nick's input, I think, which is interesting about a coffee and whatever he's drinking these days.
I could grab the product in a second. That way it might help. But overall, the consensus is that we always focus on macronutrients, carbs, protein, fats, for those that don't know. And a lot of the driving forces that really aid our body's systems are also mineral based. And we don't look at when we're working out, oh, I need protein or I need carbs. We're not thinking about, oh, I need magnesium or I'm depleted in sodium or things like that, electrolytes, you know, there are lots of buzzy words, but we don't really give it proper attention. And then the outcome of, of having too much or too little of them. So that's why I found the conversation compelling. And clearly you're in the space to talk about it with way more expertise than me. I just drink the coffee.
No, but it's interesting you say that though, because I think you're right. Like a lot of times people like just focus on macros, and a lot of times I'm like, okay, here's the macros, but then here's all these other things. Like, are you even looking at your, let's just say even something simple as vitamin C, right? Are you even looking at those things? Or vitamin A? I look at much more than that. And I look at fiber, right? I look at other content, excuse me, in the food and in your daily allowance and what you're eating. And you're right. There's so much more than just protein, carbs, fat, right? There's just so much more to eating than that. And I think if you're not getting those minerals in and vitamins in, you are missing some, you know, most of us are getting those in the current life that we're living and the availability of foods and things like that. But there are things like you said, magnesium was one of them, right? Electrolytes, like what are electrolytes? Calcium, potassium, those levels are really important to the water in the body, as well as the heart and the heart pumping. Those are all electrolytes that help stimulate this kind of well, not even getting into it, but electrical pump in the heart. Those things are really important. Calcium in the bones, right? Like you said, if it's really acidic, you were mentioning earlier, like something's really acidic, like drinking coffee every morning, then it's creating an acidic environment in the body. And that does leach out minerals. It can over time. I think it's more like not in the one time you have coffee, but if it's constantly acidic, or if we constantly are drinking coffee and other things that make us acidic in the body. And that could be a lot of different things, from fried foods to all kinds of stuff. Then you're leaching out these nutrients. And if you're not replenishing them, or you're not trying to replenish or eat fruits and vegetables, or, you know, whole grains or whatever it may be, then you're not bringing it back in. Your body needs those minerals and vitamins to do the rest of the things that it needs to do, not just protein, right? So I think that's interesting to find that, to add that into your coffee. It's almost like you're balancing your acidity, right, with those minerals at the same time. Like, hey, I know I'm doing this, but I'm going to also add this in, and not later, right at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, like CBD is only a trend that's going to get deeper. I think as that plant becomes more legal, let's just say. But, you know, I've seen like CBD in coffee. It's like, still get the buzz, but without the edge. I'm like, oh, you know, it just seems a bit like contradictory. And I think we're always trying to find a new product sometimes. And that sometimes is what overcomplicates things, where I know you're a huge proponent of just keeping it simple. And, you know, so maybe what I'm doing really with my coffee is a little bit weird. I should just maybe drink less coffee or more water. But I do, you know, like anything else, it's always good to learn more and all that jazz. See what Sydney's doing is what I should be doing.
Right, drinking water and
Peter, us both at the same time. Once he said that, I'm like,
I've gotten
going back and forth.
it was gifted to me. I think Kim has one too. That like gallon jug that like tells you where you should be drinking water like every 2 hours. I've gotten to about 5 p.m. and I don't know how someone drinks the entire gallon of this thing. I need to see it. To me, it's something close to like a David Blaine type thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's magic, folks.
That's intense. A gallon?
Yeah, I can't do it. But Kim, you never did it?
No.
I know Carissa would always walk around with that jug too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She had the big one. I have a Bubba. And I love my Bubba. I take that thing everywhere. It's great. I think it's in my room right now, but like, yeah. But it's pretty big, but it does make me, because it's pretty, it makes me drink more water. That's a thing.
That's all that matters, right? At that
point. Since I'm speaking, I'll just go with my next question. Since I'm already going. I guess I have a couple, but I can save them if other people have one, but I'll go with my first one. So I would like to know your opinion on protein powders in general, particularly like collagen. So I could not find a protein powder that I liked. You know, the guys would just like mix it with water and I'm just like, it's gross. I can't, it's gross. But my friend made me that like bulletproof coffee or whatever, which that's a whole other topic. But the protein powder that they use, the bulletproof, it's like vanilla collagen protein peptide, something or other. I really like it in my coffee. So like, I now don't even put anything else in there, just like a little scoop of that. And, you know, I like the flavor of it. And I've heard that collagen is good for your joints versus like, you know, just a regular like whey protein. But I just want your opinion on protein powders, particularly collagen protein powders.
That's interesting. That's a good question. Thanks, Kim. That's interesting because I was just reading something. Sorry. I was reading something about vegan collagen, and I was like, "What is that?" Because collagen is only an animal, so I was kind of like, "This is the new thing that's going on." Anyway, I think it's a lab-made GMO kind of like collagen that they're making. I don't understand. I got to read a little bit more. But anyway, going back to normal collagen. So from what I've seen, I've looked it up, and from what I've seen just on the collagen itself, and we'll go to regular protein powders. From what I've seen, yes, it's supposed to be more easily absorbed by the body, but the research isn't showing that the collagen protein is like, there's not strong research that says, yes, this protein is much better for your joints. That's like what they're heading towards and like kind of what it's saying. Like, okay, we're saying out of this small population that it helped their joints feel better when they ran, you know, and it's kind of hard to tease out all the little things in there. But I haven't seen anywhere that says that collagen is much better. However, I haven't seen anywhere that it says it's really bad either. So if you love it and you're enjoying it and it's a form of protein that you're ingesting, right? Then I think that's okay too. I just really haven't seen enough research to say like it's giving our bodies back the collagen that we're losing or supporting the joints perfectly or better than whey or other protein, pea protein or something else. Well, that's a vegetable, but still protein. I know. It's like, wait a minute. Protein powders in general, I think okay when they're used, if you need it. If you can't ingest the amount of protein that you need, I use it sometimes. But I also think you need to just make sure it's reputable. Like I'm so big on nothing is regulated. And the research that I've seen from like even consumer lab reports, like just regular consumer labs, they have looked at protein powders and have found like arsenic and, you know, all these selenium from the earth, like, but really high amounts where it's almost kind of toxic, some of these companies that obviously aren't testing. And so I'm always just telling people, be cautious. Like I'm one to get like pure. I don't like, you know, stevia and sugar and all this stuff in mine. Like just give me the protein. And then I just make sure that it's like a third party verified and NSF verified company. So again, it's not perfect, but it's like somebody else is checking it. There's research, so you can look and say, oh, they're actually putting what they say. Because how do you know what they're putting in there? Like, you just kind of hope and assume that the company is doing something right. So that's my big thing about powders and supplements and vitamins. Just make sure you have a good company that's reputable and that they're checking what's in there. But collagen versus whey, you know, as long as there's no allergies or anything like that, I haven't seen anything say that it's real research. I mean, I've seen companies tout it and people, but I haven't seen the real research back it up and say that it's so much better. But I'll look again, because now I'm interested if something, there could have been new research in the past, you know, during this quarantine, there's been a lot more time for people to do more research and stuff. So maybe that's something that's come up. I'll check it out and let you know. I'll do that. Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if it's frozen or if everybody's quiet.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Brandee?
Oh, yeah, anybody. Yeah, definitely. I heard somebody, but I couldn't
Cool.
see. I didn't know if it was my Wi-Fi. Sorry.
Gotcha. So Brandee, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about gut health and what makes a healthy gut. Tell me the secrets.
Tell me, I need to live a healthy. No, but that's a good, you know, without getting too personal, Peter. But you know, that's a great question too, because we, you know, we'll be talking about gut health pretty soon, and I find that like most people think that they have a decent digestive system, a decent gut, right? But I always notice when people, you know, when I see people and I'm like, okay, one of my first 5 questions is kind of like, how often do you move your bowels? How often do you have a BM during the day? And, you know, I'm not worried about it because I do this all day. I talk about poop and I talk about pee, not the most clinical terms, but that's what I do all day. That's what tells me what's coming out. I know it went in, right? So I think in my point of view, I would say if you were like the best digestive system, like the gold standard digestive system gut, right? Let's just say gold standard, you would technically go to bathroom after every meal, maybe not a snack, but after every meal, which most people go, oh my God, are you crazy? But if you think about it, you're putting stuff into your stomach, right? You're eating and your stomach goes, I need to make room for this in the intestines, and the intestines has to make room. So something should come out for something to go in. Technically, right? Most people don't work that way, but I'm saying gold standard, that would tell me something about one of the things about having a good gut. So usually people are morning and evening. If you're under 2 times a day, then I start to be like once a day, once every other day. Moving your bowels is a little bit telling me that something's slow. You're not eating enough fiber. Maybe there's some bacteria issue in there. Maybe there's not enough water, right? Maybe you're not moving. All of these things impact the gut and the way that it is. Another thing I would say, having a healthy gut is also your immune system, and your emotions are tied to your gut. So if you're somebody who gets sick a lot, or you know, always coming down with some kind of sniffles or something like that, that also tells me that there's something going on in your gut, and usually coming down to maybe some bacteria and just not processing food through. You don't really, I mean, after a few days, shouldn't be sitting in your body that long. After 2-3 days, things should be kind of pushing through, going through. You know, what you ate 2 days ago shouldn't still be in there after a few more days. So those are like some little things. I know I tend to just keep going. So I'm like, all these examples in my head, I won't run off. But I think if you just look at your bowel movement, you know, if you look at how often you get sick and how you're feeling, that's also emotionally tied to that. And balancing that out, then I think you would have a really good gut. I think movement, which you do already, right? You move, you work out. So that's run 1 off the list. You drink water, that's 2. Now you just eat healthy, which you probably do, have good bowel movements, and then also take care of yourself and from getting sick. So those could be some specific foods that we could always, you know, kind of highlight as well too. But I don't know how much of it should run on.
So poop more. Good to know.
Yeah, pretty much. Most people, I would say, Peter, most people, it's funny, like most people you ask definitely need to poop more.
Hey, can I have,
good. Thank you.
I'm going to piggyback. So on this very interesting topic that we all do, is there like an exercise you might do? For example, when I go running, I know I'm just on a more consistent, regular cycle schedule. And for me, oftentimes when I travel, things go probably nowhere, actually.
They don't go south.
Right, exactly, Paul. Do you have any like hints? And again, everyone's different. I understand that. Anything that you might do when you travel, or are there certain yoga poses that kind of happy baby, perhaps?
Right. That's a good question. No, that's actually a good point to kind of piggyback on that. Thank you. Yeah. So the traveling thing is funny, right? Because you're right. When your body's in motion, you will usually, like you said, you're a runner, your body knows that. And when you stop doing that movement, I find that like, even if you're not a runner, if I stop walking or I'm just really sedentary, like all weekend, I'm not going as much, or it's just something's off, and so, yeah, I have to move my body. It could be walking, yoga, it could be dancing, it could be, running like you do. I think those things are really good. I think when you stop that, yeah, your body's like, it helps kind of push it along, something about that with the water and the food. But when you travel, gosh, I usually, the first day is usually a tricky one because I'm usually dehydrated from the plane or the car, whatever. I don't want to go to the bathroom 15 times like I do at home. So I'm definitely not drinking as much water, and maybe I'm eating not as much or just not as good. I'm not probably sitting there eating a bowl of salad on the plane. And if they did serve salad, I don't know if I would eat it. But what I do is when I land somewhere, or if I end up somewhere, even if it's driving or something, first thing I do is I usually grab my water bottle, fill it up. And then I also, depending on, it just kind of depends, but normally for the first day or two, I'll end up taking a probiotic. So I always travel with them. That's just me, again, right? Everybody's different. You said that. But usually I travel with like 3 to 5 probiotics, depending on how long or where I am. And the first couple of days, I'll usually take one. And I like to take mine, personally, I like to take them at night because I feel like during the nighttime is when everything kind of has time to really replenish and restore. So I'm drinking a lot of water that day. I usually try to move. I take a probiotic, and then within a day or so, my site, like everything is back to normal for me anyway. If it tends to be a lot longer for somebody, I also, kind of like too much information, but I also travel with, just in case, I travel with 2 tea bags, and the tea is I think it's called, oh man, I can't even think of it. It's like a bowel movement tea, and it's like yogi tea. And I always take 2 with me just in case. But it's not like, no, but it's not like what is it? Those other ones, like an X-Lac or something. You won't like go to the bathroom a lot and be like, oh my God, what did I do? It just helps things along, and then you don't have to worry about it. But that's what I would do when I travel. So move, drink water, maybe take a probiotic or a couple with you, 1 or 2 days, maybe 3 max, you shouldn't need a lot. And then if backup to the backup is grab a couple of tea bags to make you go.
Just to piggyback off of that, one thing that I discovered traveling during the pandemic, because I was coming home. Now, I don't know if this would work on like a super long flight, because my flights from New York to Wisconsin, they were always like nonstop and like not that long, but I didn't want to like take off my mask or anything for any reason. So what I did was I usually would get like migraines traveling because of the lack of hydration and stuff like that. But so what I did that worked for both the digestive issues, but also the headache issues, is like the day before I would eat, and like the morning of, I would eat like all the watery fruits and vegetables I could get my hands on, like watermelon and all of just like everything that was like super high water content, but like food, not drink. And you can tell me if this is crazy, but I feel like when you eat it, it takes slightly longer to go through your system. So like, I felt that, kind of like what is that, front loading or front loading my hydration in the form of food before my flight, so that I didn't have to take off my mask for anything. you know, and it kind of it took a little bit longer to get through my system than like chugging a bunch of water. I felt like that I didn't get a headache and digestive issues like usually you get when you're traveling. I didn't really experience a lot of them either. So I don't know if that's something. But.
No, that's great. From like, no, right. I'm talking about the after, right. And the during, right. But no, that's good. Prepare for it. Right. And I think the foods that have a lot of water in them, which is so many, broccoli, oranges, apples, watermelon, pine, like so many, you could find lettuce, definitely will help. So that's a really smart idea. I like that. Thanks, Kim. I think we all could probably use that when we're traveling in the near future. That's awesome. Yeah. So any more on the going to the bathroom, or are we switching topics?
Oh, no. I actually had on a different topic. I had a couple questions.
No
I kind of like to make my own chicken broth. You know, you're talking about like collagen and stuff. Does that, like homemade chicken broth, does that raise cholesterol levels significantly? Is that something, if you suffer from high cholesterol or elevated levels, is that something you should be mindful of?
That's a really good question. I first off, I love the fact that you make anything from scratch, right? That's great. So the fact that you're making that, I make my own vegetable broth, and I used to make chicken broth as well. And yeah, it's so much better. Now,
it's easy, and it's super easy.
Oh my gosh, it is. You take all that leftover stuff, you throw it in there, you boil it for hours, and then, yeah, totally. I wish more people would do that, but you know, if we had time, right? So with cholesterol, that's a good point that you're thinking about that. I want to just make a really big clarification. So what we've seen, and just research and everything, what we've seen, dietary cholesterol is not exactly equal to blood cholesterol. So what they found is mostly direct link to your blood cholesterol is saturated fats and trans fats too. But you know, hopefully we're not eating as much of those, but it's almost like the body has to produce cholesterol in order to eliminate fats in the body and move them through the body, than to store them or use them as energy. So if you're eating really, really high amounts of saturated fat, the body already produces some cholesterol. And yes, you'll eat some, right? If you have tuna fish and shellfish, poultry doesn't have too much as compared to the other ones, but your body and when you're consuming high fat diets, then your body has to make more and more cholesterol to kind of help that fat through. So if you think of it that way, I think you're probably fine with the bone broth and the chicken broth that you're making. It's probably more so if you want to look at lowering your cholesterol, look at lowering your saturated fat content, you know, fried foods, eating out, you know, high meats and dairy, full fat dairy too, in high amounts. And then look at swapping some more for like more fiber. So getting more fiber and antioxidants, you know. Does that help? Or
yeah, no, that's helpful. And then also on those lines of cholesterol, like oils, like coconut, like I'm still confused about coconut oil. Is that good or bad? And then also palm oil. Like I bought a jar of Justin's peanut butter and there was palm oil in it. Mm-hmm. So is that, I'm getting conflicting, you know, I kind of did some research and Googling, and is it good or bad? Or
there's a lot of conflicting reports on that, and I still to this day cannot find a really good source for these oils that really say like, okay, I mean, there's nothing definitive, right? There's always opinions and different things, but so I'm of the opinion, I love coconut oil. I know it's from a plant. So the saturated fat is different because it's not from an animal, it's from a plant. However, what I've seen is that it's still a saturated fat, and your body still takes it in and still uses it the same way, and it's still a fat. So I always say if it's hard solidified at room temperature, like butter, you know, coconut oil, use in moderation. I was using it a lot before too, because I did the switch and I was like, oh, coconut oil tastes good, better. And then I started looking at it, and my colleague of mine and I looked at the actual like chemical bonds, because they always touted that MCT oil. There's MCTs in coconut oil, but it's not an MCT oil. It's like has more long chain than medium chain. So I think there's just a lot of misconception about it. And I think if you are somebody, if you're somebody who's healthy and you're like, I like it, okay, as long as you're healthy, you're fine. But if you already have underlying things that are going on, health conditions, right? I would say use it sparingly, like you would. Palm oil's in the same family, right? As coconut oil. It's not as, it's in a lot of things, like they use it. And I feel like because maybe it's cheap to produce or cheap to manipulate in formulas, they're just using it more. They're not using, I don't know, let's just say olive oil, right? That's more expensive. They're not using a better oil.
Got it.
And so I would be careful of that. But I know you're talking about, I like Justin's and I stopped using them because of the palm oil, and not to call them out for a company, but I use ones that people don't like because they're not, you know, they separate.
Right.
People are always like mad.
Yeah.
I use that kind because they don't have
right. Yeah. I went and bought then after I finished that jar, and then I bought Smucker's, and it's literally peanuts. That's like all that's in it. It's just the Smucker's.
Right. Just the
doesn't even say.
Oil.
Yeah. What's that?
Because peanuts have oil in them, right? I mean, when you cream it, it has oil, so it's a fat.
Right.
So
yeah, it's a fat. Yeah.
Yeah, they use a lot of salt, sugar, and another oil to kind of hold it together and make it creamy or whatever. And And honestly, when you're looking at things like this, when you're being a lot more specific and you're reading things, you'll notice it everywhere. And it's just not always needed. It's more because of convenience, and we're used to seeing it a certain way, right? When you get the jar peanut butter and you're like, why is there oil on the bottom? What is, I have to stir? Nobody wants to do that. But I would say if you're obviously you're health conscious and you're looking, if you can go without it, you know, sparingly, yes. Okay. But just like you eat eggs or dairy or something else, just sparingly right now, like they say with cholesterol, don't eat eggs. I don't think you have to sustain from eggs. I just don't think you need 3 whole eggs every day, that kind of thing. Like, I think there's a balance, you know, to that. Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That was a great question. And I get that one all the time. So I always forget, but I love when people bring it up. One, the coconut oil debate is huge. And then the cholesterol. Yeah, definitely. And I just want to say, add in oats, like rolled oats and berries and things like that into your diet, more fiber, and you'll definitely slowly over time with exercise, bring it down.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I've been doing, is like oatmeal, flax seeds, put in like a spoonful of peanut butter. That's what I was doing. Yeah. And then frozen berries.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's a great start. Yeah, that has so much right there. And that's one of the main meals I usually give people too.
Right.
That's awesome. Thank you for that question. That was awesome.
Sure. Thank you. So can I ask also about, like, you're talking about dairy, Greek yogurt, like, is that something, I mean, I'm kind of confused about that as well. Like, they said, oh, you should cut down on dairy, but I'm so confused about like Greek yogurt. Is that like totally different, or?
That's a hard one, right? I say dairy as a group, and in my head, you're right. What am I thinking in my head? Because you're thinking, oh, yogurt's great, right? I'm thinking more like, you know, milk and cheese and butter, and dairy is kind of one of those middle ones where that's like, if you're going to have some dairy, I think dairy, like the whole, and I struggle between the whole fat dairy and then the no fat dairy. I actually went back and forth for a while because I was like, no, you don't need the fat. The whole fat is bad.
Right.
Then there's also a group of people, or just a line of thinking, like, it's natural. It hasn't been messed with. It's the whole fat, and just eat simple and don't eat as much. I'm okay with either. I'm not going to say, I'm still not sure, because I feel like the science isn't really there to tell you either one. I've seen both be good, but I think yogurt has so many good things to it, and probiotics, and dairy does have a lot of good minerals in there as well, that when I'm thinking in moderation, I'm thinking some milk sometimes, some yogurt. Greek yogurt is great. It's filling. It's a great option if you eat dairy, and as long as you have no issues with that. I'm thinking more of like, you know, the butter and all the other things that go along with dairy. But yeah, that's a good question. I just mean in general as a group, but that might,
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And on that, it's like, you know, everything is so individual, right? I mean, it's so crazy how you could have not 10 of me, but like 10 dietitians, right? We all have our own opinions. We've all seen the science and walk away thinking something different, or prescribing something different to our clients. And it's just also, you know, every few weeks, I'm always like, okay, maybe we need to change this. Maybe we need to do this. Like, finding your genetics, your body, the way of life that you live, and matching that with, you know, eating correctly for your life is really hard, in the sense of just, you know, until you know yourself, until you know how you respond to things. So just, definitely try different things and do the best you can.
Brandee, spinning off of dairy, what about, I don't really eat a lot of dairy because if I do eat a lot of dairy, I break out. I don't know if anyone else has that experience. So I kind of stay away from it. But as far as getting calcium, what are some good options?
That's a good question. Right. I know, because we always tout like calcium from dairy. And oh, sorry, there was a little glitch there, but didn't mean to talk over you. But yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of people I find that have that connection with dairy. That's very common. And so once you take it out of your diet, you feel better, right? Your skin's better. And again, you go down the road of like, should you be eating dairy from another, again, I'm not going to touch that today, but just as far as if you're not eating it, I think what's really great is you can find calcium and all of these things for your bones, right? All of these minerals for your bones, and dark leafy greens are big. So that's one of my biggest for dark leafy greens. And with spinach, kale, all of those things, collard greens, eat a lot of variety there. You can also get calcium from other vegetables like asparagus and broccoli. Broccoli has a lot of things in it too, cauliflower, like so many different nutrients in there, vitamins and minerals. And I just make sure that there's a variety in there. And there's a lot of things nowadays too. Let's just say if you're somebody who doesn't eat a lot of vegetables, or you do, but maybe it's not enough, right? There's a lot of things that are fortified with calcium and vitamin D, like nut milks are fortified with calcium, vitamin D. Orange juice, has some stuff in there. Oranges do have some calcium, but they usually put in a little bit more and some vitamin D to absorb together. And taking a supplement if that's what you think you might need. If you're, the problem is that when you go to get your calcium checked, your blood levels will almost never show if they're low. That's the problem, is when you get them checked, you won't even notice, because it'll take it out of your bones to make sure the blood level always stays what it needs to be for the most part, unless there's a disease or something. So it's really hard, but I think eating a lot of greens is pretty much where you're going to get the bulk of that outside. You could probably get some in some nuts and in some whole grains as well, but I think mostly in the green department is where you're going to be able to get that, and you totally will be fine with that.
Yeah. Thank you. And what about vitamin D supplements? Do you supplement with vitamin D, and what dose do you recommend?
Oh, that's a great question. I do actually. I supplement with vitamin D in the winter. If like COVID happened, well, obviously COVID happened last year, and during the summer I wasn't out as much, so I did a lower level of vitamin D. But normally I only supplement because I live in the Northeast in the winter. I know that my stores tend to go down, just like almost a lot of us, especially New Yorkers, we're in buildings and we're not on the sun as much. I would say it just depends on how low your stores are. Like if you get your blood checked and it's really low, they're probably most likely going to suggest that you take about either a big shot of it or about 5,000 units a day. That's as high as I probably usually recommend. Most people stick between 1,000 and 2,000 if you're just not sure, or you didn't go to the doctor yet. This is not a prescription for anybody to go out and buy this. I'm just saying this is a typical 1,000 to 2,000 units. I take about 5,000 a day in the winter, because I know that I drop down really low, especially if you have darker skin, you're not going to absorb it as much, even if you stand outside and try to sit in the sun. If you have fairer skin, you'll absorb obviously the vitamin D quicker or in less time. But again, you're not out there as much. So somewhere between there is okay. I think over that, you make sure you check with your doctor, because that's a really high amount. And I also want to say on that note, though, what you're saying, if you are somebody who uses animal products or eats animal products or anything like that, go for the vitamin D3. That's the one that's the most absorbable in the body. If you don't do animal or you're vegan or vegetarian, you can do the D2. It's not bad. It's just your body has to convert it. That's all. But 3 is most absorbable. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any particular brand you like?
I have a couple. So I think the ones that are NSF certified, and again, I might be wrong, but the ones that are NSF certified are either Now brand is usually pretty good, but some of their stuff isn't certified. But I think their vitamin D3 and their D2 is pretty good. There's also Garden of Life. If you're somebody who's more on the vegan vegetarian side and you want something more whole foods kind of thing, they have a really good line there. And then I think the other one is Solaire or what is it?
Solgar.
Solgar, maybe. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Solgar. I think they're, yeah.
Okay.
Those are the ones that are also third-party checked. So those are brands that I look at. It's so hard. I go on, you look and you're like, oh my God, there's like, everybody has something and you don't know, you know, and there's all these reviews and none of it means anything because you don't know. But those are a couple of the ones that I've seen that I've liked, and I have a couple. I have now. I have some other ones like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. I like that.
Brandee, my question goes more towards like the preparation of what we're eating, right? The only way we're going to have proper nutrition is if we know how to prepare it. There's a reason why I think Brussels sprouts are all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, they're way more popular now than when we boiled them to obliteration in the 80s and 90s. It's like, oh, if you roast them, maybe they taste better. So my question is, do you have a couple of go-to methods of preparing foods? And obviously, like, certain methods go with different foods. So maybe there's some of that you can get into, just because cooking is such a dirty word with people, and then they just get so intimidated that I think a lot of the reason why we probably are full of fat and sugar and salt is because we're eating out.
Right. And coffee. No, but yeah, no, that's a good question. And actually it's funny you said that, Nick, because I was just thinking, it was the other day, I was like, oh, I should do a Food Friday on like the best, you know, certain foods, that the best way to cook certain foods, like how to absorb, you know, like if you're going to cook green beans, is it better to stir fry them or boil them? Or is it, yeah. So I actually was just thinking that. I saw something the other day. So we'll touch a little bit on this today, because I think what my go-to, okay, so I'll do a little bit here and then I'll expand more on like a Food Friday, because whenever it's green, usually I think any like leafy green Brussels sprouts, like you said, like if you boil them, you leach all of the water soluble vitamins out. So what you're looking for in a green vegetable, you basically leach it out into the water. So unless you're drinking the boiled water, which we're not, which I guess you could use as a part of a soup water, right? But yeah, so for anything green, I always try to stick to the minimal, like quick stir fry, a steam, you know, no more than like 5 minutes, or a quick broil, not a roast really, although I do roast those. I just know that I'm not getting any of the nutrients when I roast them, because roasting is a longer period, whereas broil is just kind of like put it in, you char the top, and then, you know, you take it out. So when anything like that, I try to go for the quick and easy, and that's why it doesn't have to be so demanding. Like somebody's like, I just want to be able to put this in a pot. Go for those green beans, go for the broccoli, chop it up real quick, put it in a stir fry, and like 5-6 minutes later, it's done. And it's a little bit of crunch to it, which I love, not too soft. When I think of like anything, let's just say orange or red or yellow, this is kind of a simplified form, right? But it's easier to think of it in colors. Those are usually fat soluble beta carotene kind of components, and they do fine in water. Not that you have to boil, but I'm just saying, if you were going to, what's orange, boiled carrots, or put them in a soup, I guess, because you won't really boil carrots, but if you put them in a soup in the beginning, it's okay, because they're going to keep the vitamins and you'll be fine. You'll get the vitamin A that you need. But if you were going to make a soup and you were like, I'm going to put carrots and kale in the soup, I don't put the kale in until the last 5 minutes of the soup is done. I throw it in, get it a little wilty, and then that soup is done. Like that is done, because you're going to lose it all. So I try to stick with stir frying or broil or something like that with most of the veggies. And then the other colors, you can kind of, you know, you can kind of let it sit if you want to cook them a little bit longer. I don't know if did I answer the question? Did that help?
Yeah. No. And this seems random. I do find that the microwave in small dosages works. So in a salad, I'll like nuke some broccoli for like 30 seconds to a minute.
Yeah.
Because I've heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that as you say, steam, like the microwaving kind of like steams from within. So there's a lot of water, I guess, in broccoli. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It definitely makes raw broccoli more palatable.
You know, thank you for saying that, because Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I forget. I don't use a microwave, so I know I'm weird, and I forget that people use microwaves. Hello. And so thank you for saying that. Yeah, the microwave actually can be really helpful in shorter amounts, like you said. If you put things in there too long, it just zaps the nutrients and the water out of it. Broccoli has a lot of water. You'd be surprised how much higher content broccoli has than, you know, some other foods. I forgot where it is on the list, but it's pretty high up there. And so you're right. If you kind of cover it or put it in there, it can kind of steam from within 5 minutes. So if you're somebody who doesn't want to cook on the stove, right, you can, you know, one of my things I do for my clients, I have lots of clients who are like, I don't cook. I don't want to cook. So it has to be simple. And I'm like, how do you eat healthy without cooking? It's hard. But one of the things I tell them is like, get one of those, bag of frozen veggies or the steamables frozen veggies, right? While you're getting your takeout, or if you're just grilling up some chicken, right? Grab that, put it in the microwave for 5 minutes. And then now you already have a side of veggies. You didn't have to do much. You didn't have to cut them. You didn't have to cook them, but I'd rather you eat veggies than not. So like have it in there in the frozen and add it to whatever you're doing. Especially I tell people with takeout, don't pay $5 for a side of broccoli that's this big. Just grab a thing of veggies in the freezer, throw it in the microwave, and then, you know, eat half the bag or something like that, or a quarter of the bag on your plate. And that's a great, so thank you for saying that. That's a good option if you're not somebody who cooks.
Oh, I almost forgot. And I know we've been here for a while, but it's all great information. Real quick, because being an Italian, carbs are like my blood type, and people kind of like poo-poo them. And I stand up for my people, for the carb people. Can you just get into carbs that are useful versus carbs that are not, and stand up for some of the grains, and maybe if there's a whole grain pasta out there that, you know, all my uncles and cousins could eat with safety?
You know, yeah, that's great. But you know, the difference is, Nick, too, is that your family, if they are from, you know, they are from Italy and you come from that background, you're probably making your pasta fresh, which I've seen you do. And there's not only just like, you know, I've seen you do it. And it's amazing compared to like box. Like, oh my gosh, if anybody's ever had fresh bread, fresh pasta, right? Even if it's, again, I'm not a big fan of white foods, but even if white pasta, white bread, when there's love in it and somebody put it, you know, and made it for you for this dish, I think it's incredible. And when things are made from scratch and with love and just like from where they came, it's kind of like, okay, you know, and again, in moderation. I think in general, most of us Americans, right, we just kind of buy the boxes of pasta. And I think that's where the carb thing kind of, our portions are really big and we're eating refined carbs. That's the thing. Like, I don't know. Last time I went to Italy, the portions, you're like, oh, that's all you get, you know, but then but you're such an American in the sense of, or maybe wherever, you're just used to like this jumbo sized bowl of pasta. And, you know, I think we have to kind of rethink what we're eating. I don't think carbs are bad. I think carbs are needed. They're needed to survive. They're needed to build muscle. They're needed for your brain to think. I think they're very important. When people say they don't eat carbs, I'm like, okay, so what do you mean? You don't eat vegetables, you don't eat fruit, you don't eat whole grains? What do you mean by carbs, right? So like you said, what's valuable in the carbs? I think in the carbohydrates, fruit, vegetables, obviously, right? That's an automatic yes. But when you get into grains, I feel like we just eat too many refined carbohydrates. So when I say refined, I mean like white processed, because grains usually come as a whole grain. It comes as that. And then we have to take it, strip it down and get that gooey, nice center part, that white fluffy part that we use for like Wonder Bread or something like that, right? That's the stuff that we tend to eat a lot of. And in those high amounts, our bodies are overwhelmed. You know, there's just a lot of sugar, a lot of, it's not even, I don't even always think it's the gluten, but because it's so high in certain times, your body's reacting to these processes, like these chemicals in your body. And it's like, this is a lot of stuff that it's not used to. And the sugar hits your bloodstream so fast. So you take a piece of white bread or white pasta, like you said, and you eat that. I mean, it is absorbed, it is quickly going through. Whereas if you take whole grain bread, you pick it up and it's heavy and it has seeds and stuff in it and you're like, what is this? But that's going to take a lot longer. It's going to keep you fuller. It's going to give you fiber processed through your body. It's not going to raise your blood sugar as fast. It's going to take time. And I also think like with pasta, I know nobody ever, or rice, these are the two, right? Rice and pasta. Sometimes bread, people are like, I'm not going to eat whole wheat bread, but rice and pasta, people are like, I don't want to eat it. And I think if you want to eat pasta and you want to do well with kind of curving some of that, if you can eat it fresh, right? That's great. But not all of us cook fresh pasta. Look for balancing, maybe doing half a serving of white pasta, half a serving of whole wheat until you get used to moving over, or half a serving of white rice with brown rice. That's one that's, I know it's very hard to switch from white rice to like brown rice. It's a chewy, nuttier kind of taste and texture than white rice. White rice is so gooey. I had it the other day and I was like, oh, right, this is why people like it. Like I totally forgot, because I don't eat white rice unless I go out and they don't have an option. But I like a lot of the new, I'm surprised now. There's so many new pastas out there, from lentil pasta to chickpea pasta to black bean pasta to quinoa and rice for gluten-free. Like there's so many options. There's a lot of them that are really good. I love Banza chickpea pasta, but I also love Explore Cuisine has black bean spaghetti, which I know sounds really, it's a weird texture, but it's 25 grams of protein. It's actually really awesome. There's not a lot of stuff in there. It's great. And whole wheat, works just as well. I just sometimes mix it up because you get more fiber, more protein with all the other things. Lentils are great. So I think people need to rethink what carbohydrate means. And I think we eat a lot of processed, refined crap, if I may say, and we need to kind of move away from that and think of that as more of like the fun time, right? You want a cheat meal, you want to have fun, you want to go out today with your friends, okay. But every day when you eat, you should try to look at like, a better version of what you're doing if you can. I don't know. So hopefully I think that's a good point though. That's a good point. Thank you. No, I still want fresh pasta, but anyway, okay. So, I don't have a pasta maker though. Anyone else? Any other questions, or are we kind of like pushing time here, but I just want to make sure. All right. Well, I appreciate it. That was really good. That was, I think, really informative too. And I can't wait to kind of post this up and let other people listen to it. And I appreciate like all of you coming for this. And I know it's Nutrition Month, so we're really pushing it this month, but I appreciate all of you. So thank you for being here. Thanks for asking questions.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I actually
Brandee.
have a quick kind of final question, but I didn't know if you had a deck you prepared that might have useful tips that maybe we didn't go over. If not, that's totally fine. I didn't know what you had prepared that might be useful.
You mean like a little like PDF or a little like slide?
Yeah, I didn't know if you already had something prepared for this discussion that, maybe there might be some things
No, but that
we didn't check.
You know what? No, I didn't. I came kind of with the openness,
Okay,
like whatever you guys slam me with.
Perfect.
I was figuring out. But no, that's a good point. We've been doing a lot. I know you probably follow us on the Instagram at the club. We've been doing a lot on Food Fridays, so that's pretty much where a lot of my focus is.
Got it.
But and we're going to have another discussion presentation next month. So, but I can definitely think about just some helpful tips and things like that, and just kind of nutrition in general.
Okay.
But that's
No problem.
So I didn't have anything, but thank you. Yeah. I appreciate it, Paul. Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much. This is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you being one of the non-club people. So thank you.
Paul's an absolute leader and an ambassador of the membership base. I love it.
Oh no. Thanks. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. I hope you're staying safe and healthy during this time. It's not easy. COVID has been really rough for a lot of us for many reasons, but nutrition-wise, eating, it's been tough. So yeah, definitely.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. And I'll see you soon.